Hi, everyone. My name is Dennis Kalышkin. I'm a principal at I2BF Global Ventures. It's a New York VC focused on early stage investments. And I'm happy to host the event today with a friend of mine, Pedro, and we will talk today about the enterprise sales and how early stage startups and growth stage startups could do their enterprise sales better. Pedro, thanks for joining us today. Happy to have you here. Maybe you can do a quick introduction about yourself. Guys, the video will be recorded, and I will send you the video record on the YouTube this weekend over the weekend. Yeah, and Pedro, please introduce yourself.
Great. So thank you very much, Dennis. It's a real pleasure to be here. Really happy to share a little bit of my experience with the community. Answering the question of who I am, I'm an engineer by training, electronics and computer engineer. I have done 2 postgrads, one in general management and another one in innovation management and entrepreneurship. I've spent most of my working life in enterprise IT, working mainly for large American, most of them, multinational companies in this space. So I've started my career in what today is called Accenture, coding. After that, I took a detour through the oil business, and I've worked for Mobil Oil, which was later acquired by BP, as it is known today. After that, Alcatel, here the exception, a French company, where I was product manager for cybersecurity, and lo and behold, cybersecurity existed before the year 2000. So I also wanted to let you know that this is not something new. It's something that's been around for quite a while. Not exactly in the terms that we know it today, but back then it was already important. I did product management for network security and some networking equipment, and ended up opening the consulting services vertical for them. After that, I've run one of the enterprise business units for Compaq Computer, which was later acquired by HP. As you can see, my life has been to buy and be bought by all these companies. This is something which is incredibly frequent in this space, where the fight for scale is very large, and it's basically a logic of either you get bigger or you get thrown out, or you get bought by your competitors. The question is not if, it's when you will buy or
and on what terms.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the terms are not even exactly very worrying or very concerning, but it will happen, and then things change. So I've stayed on a couple of years more after HP acquired Compaq. After that, I've opened the public administration sales vertical for EMC in Portugal. EMC today is a part of Dell Computer. So again, another acquisition. Then I went on and I've run the south of Europe for Brocade Communications, which is today part of Broadcom. Again, another one. And after that, Oracle. And who knows who will end up buying Oracle, or if Oracle will end up buying anything. It was already on the verge of acquiring TikTok, for example, a few months ago. Let's see how it plays out. So in parallel with all of this, I've been a business angel for about 10 or 12 years. So I got bitten by the ecosystem bug. back then. I think that there's no vaccine for this disease, and to be honest, I'm okay with it. I don't need this specific type of vaccine, so I'm fine, and I really like what I do. And today I do basically one of two things. Let's put it like that. The first one has to do with my activity as a business angel in the ecosystem, and I'm quite active in terms of mentoring and all of that, in a logic of giving back a little bit of the experience. This is something that I like to do, and I take a lot of energy out of this contact with young people who want to go to the moon and beyond. So that's really energizing for me. And then I also do consulting, and mainly it has to do either with fundraising or getting deal flow for VCs, which is another possibility, or in what I call business development or business and sales development roles, where I usually do sales outsourcing for large companies and set up the teams and check the value proposition and help them go to market in international markets and things like that. So quite a few different things. So I don't know, Dennis, if you want to talk about the format that we've adopted for today.
Yeah, we'll do fireside chats when I will be doing giving the questions, maybe listening to the questions from the audience, and we will have around 1 hour, maybe 1 hour and 15 minutes for the whole discussion today. So please send your questions in the chat, and then we'll try to cover all of them. And our goal is today to talk about the enterprise sales, and especially when it comes to starting your business, when you're a team of 3, 4, 5, 10 people, and you're this small company with not that perfect product, and you're trying to tackle big mastodons with their big budgets and long regulation space. So how do we even start doing this? Especially if we're first-time entrepreneurs, maybe not that experienced in enterprise sales. Yeah, and it would be great if we cover both from start, maybe some to some point when we start to hire the first sales employees and started to build the first sales team, this EA, SDR structure, something like that. So, but as you always know, we need to start from the very beginning. So what is enterprise sales, and how you, for example, you're doing SMB business selling something like for $100 versus you're doing big sales and consultancy. So what's in your understanding the metrics of enterprise, and so we could put ourselves in this bucket and then understand that all that the conversation is applicable to our business.
Sure. So just one small comment regarding the format. I've had plenty of PowerPoint in my life. I think I've eaten more than I can, so I basically hate it. I think it's a lot more interesting to have this sort of more dynamic and face-to-face interaction. So that's why I've asked also Dennis to keep me honest and on track if I somehow decide to derail, which I'll tell you it's not very hard. But Dennis will keep me on track. And if you have any questions, just put it in the chat. Doesn't matter if it's in English or in Russian, as long as Dennis can take it, and I'm sure he'll interrupt me and incorporate it here in the middle of our little conversation today. So I think that's actually the most interesting thing that we could do. So let's kick it away right now. What is an enterprise sale? So an enterprise sale, basically, you can look at it from various perspectives. When you go out to the supermarket and buy something and pay by the cashier, that is not an enterprise sale. Okay, it's not a one-shot kind of thing where there's a money exchange and that there's a person that decides on its own. Sometimes it's a little bit more complex than that. You can take your wife or your husband to the supermarket with you, and then you don't get to decide anything. The other party decides everything. But it's a simple transaction. What happens in enterprise? It's all but simple, and the more it touches and the more it affects the enterprise, then the more people and the more processes there will be. So it's typically something which is not transactional, and it is important to understand. It's not as in, here is the money, give me what I want, and goodbye, I'm gone. No, it is usually more a lot along the lines of creating and maintaining a relationship with that customer throughout an extended period of time. So your first sale is usually the beginning of something that you want to be a profitable and long-term sort of thing. Mm-hmm. The other thing to think about is recurrence. Okay, so you want to be, because it's difficult and sometimes it's not obvious how to crack the code and start selling to a big corporate. You want this to be a recurring sale. So you want to have several transactions with that customer along the way. And that's what justifies your investment in building up that relationship.
Yeah, and speaking, and would like to interrupt you here. So
sure.
One important thing to think about is when you say efforts, it means the salaries, and it means quite a hefty customer acquisition cost. It could be as easy as like 20K or 100K.
More.
Yeah. And the question, oftentimes I encounter this with the startups when they start to sell the product through direct sales and acting as if they are in enterprise business, while they charging very low prices, and actually the unit economics doesn't really work real well. So maybe we can think about it like what's the typical ticket size of the client, and the timing maybe of the closing deal versus the efforts put in would be a trigger whether I should build this sales machine with personal sales, or maybe it's time for me like to go through direct marketing and selling like here is a credit card, put the number and get the service.
Okay. Yeah, let's tackle that one. That's an interesting one as well. So it's very simple. If you come up with a bottle of lemonade and go out to the street and sell a glass of lemonade to your neighbors, that's basically the simplest type of sale that you can think of, right? So you set up your little shop in the middle of the street, you put the lemonade, you're advertising the product, passers-by go look at it. Do I feel thirsty? Do I like lemonade? Give me a glass of lemonade. Here's $1, €1, €1 ruble, one whatever, and off it goes. When you're talking about enterprise, you're usually talking a lot about a bigger sale than a glass of lemonade. And that's what justifies your investment in setting up the infrastructure that you need to address that customer. So give me a name of a company that you would like to get into, Dennis.
SAP.
Big one.
SAP.
Well, a big one, a Russian one. Let's use the Russian one, Gazprom or whatever.
Let's take Gazprom, for example.
Okay. So Gazprom is a customer where you could sell cross-sell, sell in adjacent spaces, increase your footprint, because basically the customer is so big that it will have requirements and unmet needs that you can address for your whole life as a startup and probably as a scale-up and a lot more than that. So if you want to set up a relationship with a customer that will always have requirements that you can address, and you know the people and you know the processes, it is an investment. So don't think about, for example, going to a customer this size and say, well, you can pay by credit card. That's not how it works. You need to have a payments infrastructure in place to make sure that you can adapt to their procurement process. They will have a process for procurement and for deciding. You will need to understand very well who are the people, what is the process, how it flows from one point to the other, who's an influencer, who's the gatekeeper, who's the ultimate decision maker. Usually there's not just one person, there's quite a few people, and they have their own dynamics. In order to be effective, you need to address this, and you need to be able to some extent control this process. And this is an investment. You must have somebody who wakes up in the morning, and this person eats, drinks, and breathes this customer. And they know all about this customer. They know who to speak to. They know who does what. They know where sometimes the process gets stuck. It takes time, and you've touched on that. An enterprise sale is something that can take quite a long time. I mean, typically it never takes less than 3 to 6 months. But imagine, and this could be the limit, a defense contract where you're selling a new airplane to the armed forces, or the Air Force in this case, to put it a little bit better. This is not an easy thing. You might take 5 years to sell your plane to the Air Force. They will have to do tests. They will have to see the factory. They will want to know if you can deliver the product. All of this requires dedicated people. All of this requires a long-term effort. And because the customer will buy in quantity, that will justify your investment, and that can be reused for the next iteration that you will have with the customer. So you invest once, you do one sale, you make money, and then you replicate the process based on the knowledge that you've acquired during this first run.
Yeah, coming to practice. So let's look. We're a young startup. Maybe we don't have a perfectly good product, because enterprises, they would like that your product would fit in our environment, and a lot of comply with a lot of regulation and all this stuff. And we as a small company, we don't have that. Moreover, maybe we don't even have an experienced salesperson who spent years as yourself in selling products in particular sector. So how we start to build these relationships? What's the game plan for us? And we all know that at the very beginning, you shouldn't pursue after all the enterprises, because some of them are very very skeptic about adopting some solution, while others are more advanced and open to experiment with the new technologies and have easier procedures. So how we tackle this problem?
You profile your customers. Not everybody is your customer. And what does this mean? Imagine a supermarket. When you put a product on a supermarket shelf, basically anybody that goes to that supermarket can be your customer. In the enterprise space, that is not so. You need to understand exactly who is your customer, what is the profile of your customer. If you sell a product for oil drilling, then your customer is a company that somehow is related to the business of drilling oil out of the ground. Okay? And that means that you need to be really intentional in terms of setting up what is your total addressable market and what does it look like. Okay? Then there's considerations in terms of timing, for example. Not every customer is exactly in the same phase of development as the next one. So what do I mean by this? There are customers that, given if I'm a startup and I'm putting out a product, there are customers which will be my customers now, and there are customers that will be my customers maybe next year, maybe in 2 years. And I need to be able to understand what is my market, what is my addressable market, really, right now, not tomorrow. I can start worrying about my customer tomorrow in a few hours. But today, I need to address my market, my customer today. And if I have a product that does X, I want a customer who's looking for X. Okay? Not X plus Y plus Z plus A plus B plus C. Okay? Because if I cannot address the key requirement that the customer wants from my product, then he is not my customer. Imagine, for example, Dennis, that I want to sell you a phone. But if you just bought the phone, then you are not my customer because you're probably happy with what you have right now. So the logic is exactly the same. If you're SAP, for example, and you're selling to Gazprom, and if Gazprom has just finished buying an ERP from whatever, then probably Gazprom is not my customer today. It can be in a few years if they are dissatisfied, if the product does not respond to their requirements. But what I should do is keep the door open, but say, look, Mr. Customer, you're not my customer right now. Do you know of anybody that could be my customer right now? And it's incredibly important to finish with this because customers know themselves very well. And if you ask them and if you're honest, you're not my customer, but do you know anybody? People will recommend.
Okay, and also you were saying talking about qualifying, and maybe let's talk a little bit. Maybe what parameters should we keep in mind? Maybe the size of the client, maybe some other things like we see that some of the startups of the big corporations, they announce they are doing a digital transformation or even start accelerators or fast tracks for closing deal with startups or something. So if you were the founder of a startup at the very beginning and doing very small sub solution and would like to start, and startups always need, the faster you get money, the better. So how would you tackle this? How would you qualify? What would you look at?
So in order to qualify your customers, you need to have crystal clear in your mind, what is your value proposition? What does your product do that nothing else does? Okay? And sometimes this is very easy to say. It's not very easy to think, to understand, or to put in practice. So in other words, you need to know exactly what are you doing, what your product is doing, and why it interests your customer. Okay? Example, you have a revolutionary drill for drilling oil out of the ground. Gazprom drills oil out of the ground. So there's a good thing. And my drill is different from all the competitors' drills because it lasts longer, it costs less, it does this or it does that. So if I have it very clear in my mind, what is the value proposition, then I can go and I can select the customers to whom this value proposition could interest and could make sense.
Yeah, may I interrupt you here? Because
Sure.
we oftentimes, misinterpret. So we say about tech specifications, like we do it faster, more reliable or something, while the value proposition could be really different for our clients. Like some prioritize, for example, some prioritize the cost savings, while others are more focused on like doing something faster, no matter the cost. So maybe you can say about a couple of words about value proposition and.
It has to do something called the business case. Okay, so customers do things for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that reason could be different. Like you were saying, Dennis, some people are always looking at cost. Some people are always looking at efficiency. Some people are always looking at speed. Some people are looking at whatever. So everybody can have their own reasons. And you need to understand what they can be and if your product fits that. Okay. So for example, I don't know why I'm very influenced by the army today. So I'll use another example from the army. Usually an army does not have gasoline and diesel. Usually, armies only use one type of gas. Do you know why?
It's easier and reliable.
And there's the logistics. I mean, if you need to maintain stocks for two different things, it's more difficult. If all the cars, the tanks, whatever, run on gasoline, then you just need to worry about one. Okay? If suddenly there's one that runs on 98 octane gas, another one on 95, another one on 91, another one on diesel, another one on this, another one on that, then it goes completely crazy. Okay? So this is a clear example where a customer typically says, I want to have one. I don't care if it's inefficient in some occasions, but the efficiencies of the logistics process, in my mind, justify what could be inefficient from another perspective. But you might have, for example, a transportation company, which is extremely worried about costs because they're in a very competitive market. And if you can come up with a version of diesel that will save them €1, $1, one whatever per kilometer, then it could justify for them to set up the logistics in order to make sure that they can leverage that savings. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you need to really understand what your customer is after. And for that, you need to know your customer. Mm-hmm. Okay. And once you do that, you can tailor your value proposition and your business case to that customer. And you make him a proposal, an offer that will go right to where his concerns are and right to where his pocket is. Mm-hmm. And they will listen to you.
Okay, so speaking of the qualifying and nurturing these relationships, so suppose I'm a total stranger in the new area, in this new space. I don't have a lot of network in the space, and I maybe not to the full extent understand the specifics of my potential clients. So what should I do? Should I hire a sales representative, or how I acquire, how I hack this one?
So usually the quickest way it's to get somebody that knows the market and already knows customers in that market. Okay, you go out and you hire somebody that knows very well that segment of the market. That's why you have salespeople which are specialized on finance, insurance, public administration, local administration, central government, healthcare, whatever. There's people specialized in every single subdivision of the market. And what does it mean to be specialized? It means that you know the logic, you know the business, and you know customers, and you know processes inside those customers, so that can give you a head start. You can argue, yeah, but I don't have the money to go get a rising star that knows all about sales. Then if you really need to bootstrap it, the most interesting way of doing it, and it will be a slow one, okay? And you need to be prepared for that. Do it yourself. So try and start by understanding what that segment of the market is and what his business is. So go to your computer, open up a browser, type in Google, and try to understand as much as possible what is the business, what is the rationale, what is the logic, how does that business operate, and all of that.
Yeah, but it's not enough, because you actually need to get insights from the people deeply on the market. So
then go to your friends and ask, I'm interested in insurance, for example. Who do you know that I could speak to that works for an insurance company? And it doesn't matter who it is, but you need to jump from one relationship to another. You talk to the person, you ask for help, you say, look, I want to speak to somebody in order to show my product and my value proposition, and who do you think I should speak to? You, because you're a person that works in the industry, you work at an insurance company, who do you think I should speak to? What type of person? Give me a name. And then you jump from one relationship to the other, and you build it slowly.
And also, you mentioned that suppose you have some product, but it's not perfect. It maybe doesn't serve the purpose, and maybe the value proposition, the client is looking for another value proposition. So you need to pivot. You need to do to do a lot of things. Or oftentimes you have an MVP which is not fully functional. And I also encountered a couple of cases when people start from consulting, like integrating third-party solutions of your direct competitors, or using open source to build something, and using something as a proxy, like something working, and trying you start to build the relationship. You start to working on the market. You start to get this expertise. So I'd like to hear your opinion, your limitations, maybe some other tricks to tackle this problem.
Okay, so one interesting way of thinking about this is, where are you as a startup? Okay, so startups and companies in general go through different phases. When you're in the very beginning, the product that you have is normally an MVP, if that at all. Okay, so it's a very rudimentary product, unfinished, and you're basically saying, look, I think that this is a problem, I think this is a pain, and I'm addressing that pain with this product of mine. And then you need to test it. Okay, so in these very early stages, a sale is a very technical thing, because you're normally talking about one way or another in terms of technology, and you have something which is technical. So you have technical people trying to do this job, and usually technical people are not the most adequate people for these types of interpersonal relationship jobs. Okay, but be very aware of this. Usually the sale in the beginning is a very technical sale. Okay, and that means that you have a piece of software, you have a marketplace, you have this, you have that, a piece of code, and the sale is, you go to the person in the company that feels the pain, and for this person to understand what this pain is all about, usually it's not a business person, it's an engineer as well, or it's a technical person. Okay, And it's not very difficult to form relationships in between these two types of persons. But this first product is usually an unfinished product. So it's like, let's use an example. It's like you're not offering Microsoft 365 as a suite of products where you have a spreadsheet, a word processor, something to build presentations on. Maybe you have a spell checker. So you're focusing really on one functionality and something which is a pain for somebody in a large organization. Okay. And this is a very pioneer sort of work. Okay. In the sense that, okay, so I'm trying to validate if my product is good. I'm trying to validate if this is actually something that could make sense for my customer. And what happens here is that you have a lot of conversations which are very much at the technical level and at the technological level. Once you get past that first step, you go into a second step where it's usually more a type of relationship sale. You know people, you already have a product, then you present the product to the people, and it's a more sales type of job, as sales is described, for example, in the Wikipedia. And then there's a third stage, which is when you get to scale up sort of league. And here, what you're looking at is at programmatic ways of addressing your customers. And the rationale here is like, customers in this space usually like these value propositions. So this is what we're doing. We're going after this segment, this space, and we have a set of value propositions, and then we're going after them. So it's a lot more intentional. There's a program behind things. And this is important to understand where you are in this development, in which of these stages you are, and what you're doing. Because if you're on the very early stage and you're struggling to understand if you have the right features or if you have the killer features that will make a customer buy your product, then it's a lot more of a technical sale, okay? And you need to be talking to the people that feel the pain, which are usually more technical.
And do those people, by the way, have a budget? Because you can talk to the people, but you know the CFO is making a decision. So how you start in this case?
Yeah, so don't be too ambitious, okay? It would be unheard of for a startup to go into a very big corporation and suddenly the corporation does a widespread rollout of your product. And why? Unless you have something that nobody else has. And if you do, then that's fine, great. You have gold on your pocket.
But most of the cases is not the case.
But most of the cases, it's not the case. So and they simply do not trust you as being somebody that can deliver on what you're saying you will do. They will put you to the test, and they will say, okay, so I'll let you start here very small in this very small department, and if you behave well, I'll let you do something a little bit bigger. And then if it proves that it's a good idea, and if it scales, and if it actually does what you're saying that it does, then I'll do something a little bit bigger. And then maybe in a few years, we'll talk about a widespread rollout of your product. So unless you have a scarce goods or a scarce product that nobody else has, you found an algorithm that does something fantastic. And people, and in this case, you don't sell. People buy from you. Customers chase you, and they want to buy. Like today, the vaccine for coronavirus. Pharmaceutical companies are not selling. Everybody's buying. Everybody. They don't need to sell. And they mark the price, and they mark the terms, and we'll deliver this much to you. No, but I want twice. No, you don't. I will only give you 1/4 of what you're asking. And why is that? Because I say so. So there's a huge shift in power when these types of situations happen. But unfortunately, this is the exception, it's not the rule. So don't go straight to a very big company dreaming that you will have a purchase order the next day to do a widespread rollout throughout the entire company if you don't have a unicorn in your pocket. You will need to focus very specifically in one group of people that has a very strong pain, and you will be able to address that pain. And then you build on top of that, because you build upon your reputation.
Mm-hmm. And there is also another. So the first idea is to go maybe sometimes to smaller players on the market, but still really feeling the pain. And another thing is, oftentimes, segment your market really granularly and try maybe to address a very narrow segment, but do a very good job in it. And if you do it right for one person, then you will have 10 more friends of theirs coming in. So maybe we can talk about this, the concentration and
it's called a leverage sale. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that you focus on serving one customer and serving him well, because example, a friend of mine has put something together for CFOs to do the budgeting process. It's not rocket science in the sense that there's no huge technological development behind it, but it's something that serves a very specific purpose. And the purpose is, when you get into a budget cycle for the next year, you need to have inputs from quite a few people. Like, how much, Dennis, how much will you sell? John, how much will you produce? What's your sales forecast? What's your production forecast? What's this? What's that? So it usually has to come from quite a few people. And the way that companies usually do this is through Excel spreadsheets, which is a nightmare to manage. And usually this is a problem for the financial department, because the CFO usually goes to the board meeting, and then the board suddenly asks a question and says, and what if Dennis fails his sales target and he sells 10% less than what he says he will? What happens in this case? Will we still run a profit, or will we be below break-even point? And then the CFO needs to go back and rework all the Excel spreadsheets. So if you come up, like this guy did, with a clever way of putting together all the inputs from all the people that he needs to have, and playing with the numbers without having to spend weekends at home consolidating Excel spreadsheets, there's value for these people here. You're not going to charge millions and millions and billions of dollars or euros or whatever it is for this type of thing, but you will be able to charge, because they will put a price on their time. Okay. And if you focus on really serving one CFO with this very simple piece of his life, which can turn into a nightmare, this CFO has friends in other companies. And this CFO will be the first one who will be doing the selling and the advocating for you to his friends. And he'll be the one to say, oh, look, I've bought something from this company, and now I get to spend the weekends at home during financial planning cycles. And these friends will say, give me the phone number because I want it too. Okay, so you're converting, you're leveraging, you're making sure that your customer is turning into your best salesperson, because he's the one that is doing the recommendation to his friends. And I mean, if I tell you that I'm very good, you can believe me or not. But if somebody that knows me and that you know says out loud that I'm very good, then it's worth a lot more than when it comes out of my mouth. Okay, it's called a recommendation.
Yeah, I know.
And if you have a recommendation, that's usually the best sales tool that you could have.
And this is the reason you need to start from serving a small subgroups where these recommendations work really well.
And then ask them to sell it on your behalf. Say, are you happy with what I gave you? Could you please recommend it to your friends? And they will.
Okay. So quick question to you to how to like, for example, you go after the some potential client. Any tips on how to get prepared to this to the meeting? Like how to make know your client preparation work at home?
So you need to have a relevant conversation with that person. Okay, it's fine if you don't know the person. You might be more at ease or less at ease. It has to do with the fact that you're more outgoing or less outgoing. That's okay. That's what it is. But you need to be able to have a relevant conversation with this person. And what is a relevant conversation? A relevant conversation is a conversation about a topic that worries this person. Okay, so you need to try and find out what are the topics that worry this person. Okay, what keeps them awake at night? Okay, and how can you do that? Understand the industry, understand the customers, understand the regulations, understand the context. So if for example a new law just came out and it forces you to have a QR code in every invoice that you issue. Okay, this is something for real here in Portugal right now. So people at the end of last year were actually very worried about how this is going to turn out. So now I need to have a QR code in my invoices. Okay, so you need to pick a topic which is relevant and which has to do with a problem that you're solving. It's like, no, I'm the guy that draws the QR code in every single invoice that comes out of your printer. So I sit down, I have a pen, and I put a QR code in there. Oh, okay, that's fine. Well, if you can work fast enough, then maybe you can solve my problem. Yes, I'm very fast and I'm very cheap. Okay, well, come when you want, sit down, and there you go. But on a more serious tone, the conversation needs to be relevant. I mean, you cannot sit in front of this person and say, well, the weather today it's fine or it's not fine, it's snowing, it's raining, or it's hot or it's not hot. It needs to be and it needs to be a conversation that is done through questions. Dennis, do you have this problem? How do you feel about it? Have you found out a way to solve it? How are you solving it? What are you doing about it? What would be nice for you to have? Okay, so it's a very exploratory conversation, and don't be put off by the fact that sometimes you get out of the meeting without anything in your hands, let alone a PO, but sometimes you just get out of there without any relevant information. So this is also part of the sales job. You say to yourself, fine, this is a numbers game. So I need to go on to my next customer where I'm going to learn something.
It's a tough one because I was doing cold calling, cold sales myself. It's it's exhausting. You leave in the room without
anything.
Yeah,
so imagine there's this old story. This is an example that is always used in sales trainings. Those people that go door to door to sell internet subscriptions, for example, and they get to this very large apartment complex with 300 people in there. And they know statistically that they have a 1% chance of conversion. So a lousy salesperson will go into this 300 apartment building complex and will start knocking on the doors, and they'll get no, and then they say, nobody here is going to buy anything. I'm going back home.
Mm-hmm.
I've just had 5 no's in a row. A good salesperson will know that because there is a conversion rate of 1% and because there's 300 prospects in front of them, they should leave the building with 3 contracts in their hands. So the trick here is I want to find as quickly as possible who are the people that are going to buy from me. And in that sense, I knock on your door. And if you're not my customer, then I want to move on to the next one as quick as possible. You're not my customer, that's fine. I know that there's 3 customers here in the middle of these 300 people. I just need to find them. The quicker exactly. I find it, the better.
Yeah. While I was working in sales, my colleague, he was doing these calls, and he was sometimes angry, but he was saying, "Yes, I'm one call closer to closing another deal." And another trick he had, he was doing. We were doing not big enterprise sales back then, but another trick he had is he came by to the office of the potential client or the current client. He was finishing the meeting, going out and thinking, okay, I'm in the business center. Let's look at the companies, other companies here, maybe knocking left or right door and maybe asking if they need exactly the same.
Look, one of the most important things that you have in sales is information. Okay. It just came to my mind, and I don't want to forget about it. Another very interesting source of good information to talk to your customers is LinkedIn. Understand who are the people you're going to sit in front of. Okay, have a look at their profile. Everything's public today. I mean, understand where they're from. Maybe they studied at the same university that you did. You already have a motive for conversation. Maybe they come from the same place that you, and maybe they're somewhat family in one way or another. Everything's possible, but you can have a relevant conversation with all the information that you have today. And if you're visiting a very big complex with lots of offices and companies, I mean, if you're going to the 10th floor and if you have the time, instead of taking the elevator when you come down, walk the stairs, go to the 9th floor and go to the receptionists and say, well, what does this company here do? Would they be interested in something like this? Yes, no, maybe. You get a no. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. You go down 1 floor. And what if somebody tells you, yes, we've just been looking for something like that? It's a numbers game. It is a numbers game.
Actually,
and it's all in your mind.
I have a friend of mine who was making sales to mobility in mobility space, and I also advise him. Who cares? You're now in Berlin, for example. Just go to the office of Bolt and ask around. And what he actually did, he said he went to receptionist and they were at WeWork. He said, I have a meeting, and they were trying to figure out if you have an appointment and who is you're in connection with. And he was, he was really persuasive. And then a person showed up, and they had a pretty nice conversation while it was really cold meeting. They didn't have anything in their mind.
Imagine that you're selling, I don't know, let's put a name on it, translation services to technological companies. You go to WeWork and you're going to go and talk to a company there, which is a prospect of yours. I mean, the profile of the companies that are in that WeWork space is very similar. If you're offering translation services, wouldn't it be a good idea to talk to them all in that WeWork space, for example? So if you're going there for a meeting, why not stop by the reception and say, look, I'm doing translation services. I've been visiting this company. Are there any other companies which are here that could be interested in something like this? And they will tell you, well, actually, here's the list. And I can see that Mr. A and Mr. B and Mr. C are available because I'm seeing from here. Let me give them a call and see if they want to talk to you. And suddenly you turn one sales meeting into 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever.
Yeah. So time-wise, we don't have a lot of time for today's call, but I have a couple of really serious questions to you.
Yeah,
so
let's hear them.
Let's talk about okay, we started doing first sales, and maybe the first year of the startup passed when CEO is doing all this heavy lifting job, and at some point you need to hire people. So first of all, how you understand when you need to hire a new person, and then how you should think about your first hire or the first couple of hires you need to do,
Okay.
because and also it's also there is a notion that sales, the CEOs, well, they're very passionate about their product. Often they have really good conversion, while if you hire a stranger, the conversion could fall. So how should we think about it?
Okay.
When and how and
when?
What?
The when is very simple and very easy. When you understand that you cannot do it yourself. So whenever you reach a point where you say, I'm the CEO and I should be the one doing the sales, or I'm not the CEO, I'm the CFO or the CTO, whatever, it doesn't matter. And when the sales job gets in the way of what this person should be doing, if you're the CEO, you should be running the company. If you're the CTO, you should be worried about the technology. It does not mean that you do not help. It does not mean that you do not also participate in the project, in the process. But when you realize that you are the bottleneck and you do not have the time to do it all, which is very early and very in the beginning, if you're honest, then it's the time to hire.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of delegation. I mean, you can also wash your own clothes by hand, but usually you cannot afford to do that, so you buy a washing machine. It's as simple as that. Okay? So very early, to be very specific and to give a very direct answer, very early in the process, and when you realize that you are the bottleneck and you are the one putting the brakes on the development of the company because you're trying to do it all and it's impossible. Okay? So that's the first one. And it is also an investment. These things take time. Nobody is coming to you, or it will be very difficult. It's possible, but it's not common to go out and hire somebody and then suddenly the next day there's POs raining from everywhere. This usually does not happen. So these people need to have the time to understand what the company is all about, to understand what the value proposition is all about. They need to be able to go out and test it with the customers that they know. Mm-hmm. They need to understand if there's a fit, if they need to change the speech, if they need to change the value proposition. Yes, no, maybe. So this is a process that takes time. Okay. So when you should hire, as soon as possible, unless you say, I'm fine, I don't need to sell in the next 3 years.
Yeah, another question, while you're doing startup, you oftentimes get the feedback from the market, and you don't even have a sales playbook, and the signals from the market leads to tuning and adjusting the product itself. And there is oftentimes the recommendation that at this stage you can't delegate it, because you have a good salesperson who's doing sales but doesn't get the feedback, and you end up without both sales and product. And
again, it doesn't mean that you remove yourself from the process. Okay, it means that you can also participate in the process, but if you're the bottleneck, then it's wrong. Okay. Another thing is, keep it very much under control. So there's no reason why you should not go out and visit customers with your salesperson every now and then. There's absolutely no reason. You don't need to go to them all. Okay, you can go to some, you can understand what are the comments that are happening in the market, and if the people that you've hired are honest, they will give it back to you, and you will be able to understand. It's better to hear it firsthand. Yes, it is. Your day only has 24 hours. So be mindful of your time. It's important. The other thing that makes sense, and usually when you hire, it's because you have already tried to do the job. So another common mistake is, don't hire if you do not know the process or if you have not tried to do it. Okay, if you don't know how to cook, get away from the stove, because I can guarantee that the first time you're going to try it, the result is not going to be eatable.
Yeah.
Okay, so learn, try it, take your lessons. If you're the CEO, you should be a fast learner. And then get somebody to do that for you, and you will know what to look for and where the red lights will be and what are the points that you need to control. But there's an old saying that goes something like, if you don't know how to do it, you cannot manage it. And it's very true. You need to be able to understand what is going on. Okay.
Okay, a couple of questions from me, and then we'll switch to the questions of the audience. Speaking of the profile, the potential profile of the person you try to have. For example, you did your first sales. Maybe you understand the process. You need a good salesperson, bad sales, I don't know. So how do I do this process of hiring? What pain points should I keep in mind hiring the person and onboarding them?
Yeah, in other words, how do you qualify your salespersons like you qualify your customers? How do you profile them and how do you qualify them? Very easy. I mean, sales skills is a set of things that it's not very hard to look for. Okay, so a person who does not like to speak, who's very introverted, who has difficulty establishing relationships, usually it's not a good salesperson. Okay. Another point is that sometimes you need to think of sales as a sales team. Sometimes you need somebody to take care of the relationship part, and sometimes you need somebody to take care of the technical part. And then you have a pre-sales engineer, or the names vary in the industry, but you could have groups of people or teams of people that take care of a specific customer or a sale, and each one has its different set of skills. So understand what you need. Do you need somebody to create relationships very quickly? Then you need people which are sort of the life of the party. Very open, with charisma, that feel very at ease with relationships, can build relationships very quickly, and so on and so forth. And then the rest of the trick is incentives. So a salesperson must be hungry. And you need to put in place the right set of incentives for them to run. So, for example, if you do not offer a variable salary or a bonus, then what's the incentive for this person to work faster or slower?
Mm-hmm.
So you need to consider this. You need to put in place a set of incentives that will make these people move forward.
Mm-hmm. And there is also, especially for startups which are expanding to other markets, there is a problem that works sort of negative selection. Like you hire a person from a country, it could be not not top notch person. So he or she would work for 3 to 6 months and say, "Hi, he or she just got the salary. Your product doesn't work really well, so bye." So how could I avoid situations like that? And
you can't. The truth is you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's always that risk. Imagine that you're selling in a completely different country and you know nothing about the cultures. Imagine that you're now selling in Japan, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing that, it takes preparation. Okay, you need to understand what is it like to sell in a country that's so far away from your own culture, because what you think could be a good salesperson according to your references might not be a good salesperson in Japan. Okay, so you need to understand a little bit of the culture and what goes on. Okay,
so how do I do it?
You interview the people and try to understand how they will do it. Ask them, how will you do it? I mean, we're Latin Americans, for example. We have this product. It's incredibly successful here in Latin America. Will it work in Japan? How would you sell this product in Japan? And if they don't know how to answer this question, then either your product is not sellable in Japan or they're not the right person.
Mm-hmm.
So be aware of that. Ask them how they will do it.
Mm-hmm.
Does the product need to be changed? What will work in that market? Do your homework in those circumstances, especially if you're moving into a country which you don't know. Example of things that usually happen. Payment terms. Payment terms vary incredibly around the world. There's countries where you're supposed to pay your invoices straight away. There's countries where you're supposed to pay your invoices 3 months after. There's countries where you're not even supposed to pay your invoices. So be careful with that. There's a big influence of local culture there. And you need to try and find, and you need to put the people in role-playing positions in order to understand how they would do it, and have them describe the process to you in detail. How would you do it? Who would you approach? How would you sell this? What would you do?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How long would it take?
Okay. And speaking of, the other side of the hiring process is the firing. So how I understand that the relationship with the exact person, the exact sales per rep is not working out, because in startups we always need to fire fast, because you don't have a lot of time and resources for the mistake.
Yeah. So sometimes they cannot sell because your product is not sellable, or
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have a decent value proposition. So you need to be very aware of what is going on, and you need to have this conversation ongoing with the people. Why is it not happening? What sort of struggles are you facing? Why isn't it quicker?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be because of many reasons. It could be because of the product. It could be because of the value proposition. It could be because you're totally wrong in terms of how the customer does it. Okay. Imagine, for example, that you're trying to sell a hammer to a customer that only uses screws. Why would they need a hammer? Okay, so it's a big problem with the value proposition. It has nothing to do with the salesperson. And if the salesperson is senior enough, they will be able to tell you. If all you get are excuses like, no, today it was raining, nobody answers my emails, nobody replies to my phone calls, that's a problem with the salesperson. Okay.
Yeah, but oftentimes, you know, they have more advanced excuses, like, you know, you don't have the functionality like this, and I can't sell it. But maybe the reason is that they don't have, they addressed the wrong subset of clients.
If that's the case, tell them, look, take me to the customer with you. I want to hear it first hand from the customer. Go with them and see what happens. Evaluate them. See what they do, see what they say. Is it what you expected them to do? Would you buy your product from that person? If you do, and if the customer says, no, we only buy it once a year and the date was yesterday, so maybe you need to wait another year before you can do a sale to that specific customer, right? It has nothing to do with the person. It has to do with the customer-specific timing. But make sure that the customer tells it to you.
And I guess you need to do this guest visits as early as possible with
yes. Yeah, you need to be there and understand what is going on.
So
don't just
every week, like, try to go here and there on the customer meeting and get the pulse of what's going on. Okay. Yeah. And also, you know, in enterprises, it takes time to build a relationship. So you hire a person, when you can get the first results, like, what is the reasonable time for them to, like,
if less than 3 months, usually it's very rare. Okay. Because the product you're selling, usually it's not as simple as that. So 3, 6, 9, 1 year, 1 year and a half.
But any any proxies you could think of that you're moving in the right direction and you can keep track on?
Look, if your competitors with a similar value proposition or addressing that space take 3 months to sell it, why would you think that you can take less? So, and unless, again, you have something which is revolutionary, why would you take less?
Okay, understood. But I meant maybe some metrics of the funnel, like, it's not a conversion, but like pilot, number of pilots, number of something.
Yeah.
Something like
manage it closely. That's the most that's the biggest advice that I could give.
Yeah, I have 2 questions from the participants. So the first one is how to enter the big corporation, because they don't they hide the contacts of the senior person, they don't answer LinkedIn, so they don't have contacts on the website. So how do I crack this?
Referrals. Find somebody that works there. And see who you could talk to. If that person is able to introduce you to another person, then you can jump from one to the other.
And another question is, how about asking money from the government after delivering the product software that is intended to its constituents? Should I ask for the governments to So I didn't understand the question to the full extent. So should I? The person is trying to sell through the governments to some.
It's a difficult one. I mean, if selling directly to your customer is already hard enough, so if you sell through the government, that's even worse. You lose the control. Try to do it directly in the beginning.
Okay, and you know. Maybe the last question on my end would be you know, there is a structure of SDR when you have a person who qualifies leads and, you know, making another appointment. So various scheme of this enterprise sales. So maybe you can tell a little bit about how
usually what companies do, once they've understood exactly who their customers are, okay, they start to automate parts of the process. Like I need to find customers with this profile, so you don't put senior salespeople doing this. This can be a programmatic kind of thing. Like, for example, suddenly you realize that your customer is a company which is 3 years old and is in between $5 and $10 million of revenue. So you start to automate that part of the process, which is, let me find companies that fit this criteria. And then with the output of this process, you give it to salespeople. So when you get to that point, it means that you already have a very good understanding of who your customer is and how you can segment it. And that's a nice thing. That's when you can start doing that sort of thing.
Any other tips or advices on how, you know, what we should keep in mind while starting to build, you know, this sales department or hiring a couple of people?
Yeah, I'll finish with this one because it's the most important thing, I would say. You're delegating, right? So if you're delegating, it does not mean give the job to somebody and forget. It means explain them what they should do, and then be there and control it on a daily basis or something like that. If you do that and you say, well, look, this is what was expected, this is not what was expected, you progress and suddenly there's no surprises. Problems come when you give it away and you forget. And you come back and then you say, oh, we've got no sales. Yes, we don't. And then it's too late and time has gone by. So keep it close to you. It's something that needs to be controlled. So we should wrap it up, no?
Yeah, the final question from the participants, if maybe your recommendations on how to get trained on sales skills, maybe like go after a course or
yeah, it's a good idea to do it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in YouTube and floating around in the internet. There's things which are more useful than others, but I would say it's a good place to start. If you really want to make it shine, get the people, hire the people, and have something built specifically for you, if you can. That would be the most effective kind of thing. Get somebody in to sort of who knows what they're doing, and put something together. And maybe go to the customers with your people, to a few customers with your people, and see what happens. And that's the best way. See somebody doing it and follow it.
Yeah, but I see another comment. Pedro Santos is saying hi to you. Said like the webinar. Yeah, and any final words to our participant today?
Well, if you're interested in this topic, then that means that you are on the right track and you're concerned with the right things. So get on Google it, and keep on pushing. It's a numbers game. Don't forget.
Thank you, Pedro. It was a really pleasure hosting this webinar today. Hope to see you on some other webinar on some interesting sales topic sometimes next.
Thank you very much, Dennis.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Yeah, guys, there was another question from Max, how to find investment for startup companies. Unfortunately, it's another big topic out of the scope of our today's discussion. Maybe we'll talk about this sometime next time, or you can reach me out directly and we can chat. Okay, so thank you for participating today.